Hello everyone, welcome back to the Flicks Files. Today I'm going to do a different video again. And I'm not going to do a collections video, I'm not going to do a review. I was left a comment on one of my earlier videos by a user that put me in touch with another channel, with a chap that had a kind of movie questionnaire that he was working through. And I have it on my tablet because there are quite a number of questions. So I'm going to go... Excuse me, I will keep looking down on this video like I'm a newsreader because I'm referring to my tablet. But it's a series of 24 questions to do with films. And this particular user commented saying, would you have a go at answering these questions? Because I'd be intrigued to know what your answers are. And I thought, yeah, that would be quite fun. I often said that if ever I hit the heady heights of 500 subscribers, I would love to do a sort of Q&A with people asking me questions about films or about me. And, you know, I would collate them and make a video where I answer them. And I thought, yeah, a questionnaire about films and my tastes in films, this would be quite fun. So I thought I'd give it a go. So as I say, it's 24 questions. And I'll put the questions up on the screen and then I'll answer them. Some of them I'm just going to answer really quickly. Some others might need a little bit of explanation, but I can't imagine this video is going to be very long. So let's give it a go. So the first question is, now, the way these were formatted, some of them are formatted very simply. So I've kind of embellished the question a little bit so it makes more sense. But the first question just says favorite movie of all time. So that is obvious. So my favorite movie of all time, people that have watched other videos on this channel will already know what I'm going to say, but it's Alien, 1979's Ridley Scott science fiction classic. First saw it in 1981, fell in love with it. I've loved it ever since. I've watched it. I think I calculated once that it was easily over 100 times. I can't imagine it would ever not be my favourite film of all time. I don't ever think another movie will ever come around that will knock it off that top spot for me. I've always loved it. I always will till the day I die. So that's an easy one to answer. Alien. Question 2. It just says best script. So which movie has the best script? And I thought about this quite hard because you think, I don't read, I have a few books of movie scripts, some of the very early Quentin Tarantino movies. I have the kind of script version when it was published as a book, but I don't read movie scripts. So to answer this question, I had to think of a movie in terms of how tight the plot was and how cleverly it was structured. And as a movie script, how it was perfectly balanced and there was no fat, you know, it was just absolutely mint and you wouldn't want to change a single scene. Otherwise it would just, you know, dismantle the whole movie. So I came up with, for the best script, the first Back to the Future film, which was written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. And when you watch that movie, I've always said that if I'm talking to someone about films and I mention Back to the Future, if they said, oh, I'm not keen on that film, then I would find it very hard to believe if they liked any movie. Because how can you not like Back to the Future? And as a structure of a plot, it's flawless, especially dealing with something as complex as time travel. Every scene gives you a little bit of information. There's nothing wasted. There's no wasted in that film. So that's my answer to that question. The best script is the first Back to the Future movie, because I just think it was amazing. And how many rewrites they did to get to that final script, I'd love to know. I'd have to read up on some background on it. So question 3, favourite poster. I have a favourite movie poster. And you probably think because my favourite film is Alien, that I'm going to say the Alien movie poster. But no. My favourite movie poster is Jaws. And I think that image of the woman at the top of the poster, the little woman swimming and the huge shark just under the water, is so iconic. And when I was a child in the 70s, I remember seeing that image everywhere, on T-shirts, in shop windows, posters of it everywhere. It was just that image that you saw a lot of. And I always think as a poster, it's just a fantastic piece of graphic design. And it sells that movie really well. Obviously, it sold it really well. It was the biggest grossing movie of all time when it was released. And it's not aged. It's still a very modern looking poster. And I love Jaws. It's in my favourite movies of all time list. So yeah, that's my favourite poster. Question 4, it just says, I'll watch it someday. So this must be a movie that's famous, but for whatever reason, I've never got around to watching it. And I've thought about this. And there are movies that are famous that I've never watched, but I don't really want to watch them. Like Citizen Kane. Never seen Citizen Kane, and I know a lot of people say it's the greatest film of all time. But I've read up on it, and I thought, it doesn't really appeal to me from the sound of it. But the one movie that I do keep hearing film critics talk about, and I've never seen it, but I will get round to it one day, is Akira Kurosawa's The Seventh Samurai. And I know that George Lucas influenced The Seven Samurai as a big influencer on Star Wars when he wrote the first Star Wars script. So I've got that on my to-watch list, which is a very small list, but that's on there. So question 5 is, it just says big personal impact. So I guess that means which movie did I see that had the biggest impact on me as a person? And again, that's a very easy one. That would be when I first saw Star Wars on the big screen in the cinemas in 1978. So you have to remember, this was before anybody really knew what Star Wars was. When it wasn't called Episode 4, it was just called Star Wars. And the first contact I had with Star Wars was in England. There's a magazine called TV Times that has all the TV listings in it. And I can remember one week we had a copy of the TV Times, and it had a photograph of R2-D2 and C-3PO. And I can still remember seeing this photograph in this magazine and just thinking, oh, look at those two funny robots, and not even knowing what their names were, never mind what movie it was from. So that's like my first memory of being aware of Star Wars, and then seeing it at the cinema and just seeing this whole science fiction world unfold in front of me was just incredible. And I probably walked out of the cinema and wanted to immediately join the queue again to watch it straight away. And I've never forgotten that. And I think it changed me as a person. It changed, well, it didn't change. It fed my love of movies. And it cemented science fiction as being my favorite genre in movies. And it always has been. So, question 6 says best long movie. This is an easy one. One of my favorite films of all time is Lawrence of Arabia. And it's a long film. I think it's about 3 hours and 40 minutes. It's so long that if you have the 4K of it, it's on 2 discs, and it comes with an intermission. And I watch it every Easter Sunday. I don't know why Easter Sunday, because it's not a religious movie. And I'm not religious, but there's something about the long bank holiday weekend of Easter that it just seems to be the perfect movie to sit and watch on Easter Sunday afternoon. So it's a movie that I've watched every year for quite a long time, and I never get bored of it. Question 7, it says, you like, but everyone hates. So a movie that I like that everyone else hates. This is an easy one, because I have a movie that I like, and whenever I mention it to people, they go, what? You don't? You like that? It's awful. And that movie is Howard the Duck. And it's difficult for me to explain why I like it. And there are things in it that are crap. I'm not going to say it's a fantastic movie, but there are things in it that I really like. One of them being the actor Jeffrey Jones. Now, I know Jeffrey Jones has got a bit of a, well, he has got a tarnished character. Things have come to light in recent years. But I try and watch movies through a lens of history and watch them as they were when the year that they were made. And nobody can detract from the fact that Jeffrey Jones was very good in films like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Beetlejuice. And I thought he was really good in Howard the Duck. And if you know that movie, there's a scene towards the end where he gets kind of possessed by I think it's called a dark overlord. And it changes his voice. So he starts speaking like this and he has all these evil powers and it's just really good. And some of the special effects, which are like pre-CGI, industrial light and magic at their very best. Yeah, there's some cracking bits in Howard the Duck. And I actually have it on 4K. I bought it on 4K. So that's the movie that I like that everyone else that I know absolutely hates. So the next question is a movie that I hate, but everyone loves. Again, I didn't have to think about this very, very long. I hate Christmas. I'm 54. I'm very jaded when it comes to Christmas. Christmas is for children. I don't mind children celebrating Christmas. And I enjoyed Christmases when I was young, but I don't have any children of my own. And by the time I reached, I would say 14, I kind of started to see the commercial aspects of Christmas and just started to get a bit jaded with it. And then every year since then, that's got worse and worse to the point where as soon as the last firework bangs on bonfires night, you can start to hear the tinkling of Christmas carols in the background on the horizon. And you think, oh no, Christmas is coming around. There's no getting away from it. We've got to put up with this for like the next 8 weeks. So when I thought of a movie that I hate that everyone loves, I immediately thought of Christmas films. And I ended up picking Elf, starring Will Ferrell. I'm not a massive fan of comedies. Maybe I am inherently a depressive person. I have a few comedies, but I don't go out of my way to watch comedies. And there's very few comedies that make me laugh. I can watch the majority of them with a stony face. And I happened to catch a bit of Elf when it was on one of the streaming services one Christmas when we had some friends round and we had it on the television in the background. And I saw what I call a non-lethal dose. And I just saw enough of it to think, oh no, that's not for me. Forget that. And yeah, so that's the movie that I hate, but everyone that I know that I mention that film go, oh, I really like it, because I'm the miserable bastard of the group. A film that's underrated. There's a movie that was released in 2013 by a director called Jonathan Glazer called Under the Skin, a science fiction film. And that is a very underrated movie. And I would say it's probably, along with the 2 new Mad Max movies, I would say this is one of my favorite films of the 21st century so far. And I'm going to be doing a deep dive video on that movie at some point in the near future. So look out for that because I want to give it more love. I don't think enough people are talking about that as a film, and I really like it. So question 10 is, it just says overrated. So a movie that I feel is overrated. Star Wars The Force Awakens. When I did finally see this, as I say, I didn't see it at the cinema. I was very disappointed. It was much like how I felt when I saw The Phantom Menace back in 1999. And I realized at that point that Star Wars, for me, is still the original trilogy. So I always say to people that I have a rule that if somebody comes up to me and says, oh, I'm new to Star Wars, do you think I should watch it? I would say, look it up on IMDb, look at the cast list. If Alec Guinness isn't in it, don't bother. And that's the way I think. Just stick with the original trilogy. If you're really curious, by all means, watch the prequels and then watch the new trilogy. But I would be surprised if you came away from that enjoying all 9 of those movies on exactly the same level. I'm sure if you watch them chronologically, you'd probably think, oh, this is okay, but I'll stick with it. And then you'll get to the middle 3 and think, oh, these are brilliant. And excuse me, and then get to the last 3 and think, oh, it's lost its way. Excuse me. So yeah, that's the movie that I was considered the most overrated. So question 11 is, why do I like this ? So a movie that I've seen, I'm interpreting this as a movie that I've seen that I thought, I really enjoyed that, but I don't know why, because it's not like the kind of movie I normally watch. And there's a movie called 84 Charing Cross Road, and I think it was made in 1984. And it stars Anthony Hopkins he owns a bookshop. And the bookshop is at the address 84 Charing Cross Road. And Anne Bancroft is living in New York, I think. And the whole movie is just a series of pen letters. It's a series of communication between this American in New York and this bookshop in London. And Anne Bancroft likes her books. And she orders a book from London because it's one that she wants and she can't get it in America, from what I remember. And thus begins this relationship between her and this bookshop through letters. And it's a lovely, lovely movie. And I remember watching it thinking, how did I miss this? How did this not appear on my radar? And I've often thought, why does this film appeal to me so much? And it's one of the films that I have on like a digital file. I've never got around to buying the physical Blu-ray of it. I must look to see if it's available because I really should pick that up. But yeah, that's my answer to that question. Question 12, it says, great soundtrack. Now, this could be like a twofold question because it could be soundtrack as in film score, original music, or soundtrack as in the collection of songs for that movie. I'm going to go with film score, and I'm going to pick Vangelis and Blade Runner. And I think if Vangelis hadn't have scored that movie, it wouldn't be quite as iconic as it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ridley Scott and the visuals of that movie are just incredible. And I've read that MTV wouldn't have been MTV in the way it appeared if it wasn't for Blade Runner. And the amount of music videos and adverts that film spawned and where they tried to emulate the look of it, it's all true. But the score by Vangelis is beautiful. And the score and how it complements those visuals. You've only got to watch the opening sequence to understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's my pick for that. Question 13. It just says, that cinematography. There are a lot of great cinematographers out there. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Roger Deakins, Hoyte van Hoytema, Greg Fraser. But I was thinking, what film have I seen fairly recently where I was just completely bowled over by how beautiful it looked? And the movie I've chosen is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. And it's a movie, I believe he shot this in colour, but they did something photochemically to the film when they developed it to turn it into a kind of black and whitish look. And I understand he was the cinematographer on that movie as well. And it's just an amazing looking movie. And I was thinking of all of Alfonso Cuarón's work, and he's obviously got a really good eye because all of his films have a quite unique look to them. If you think of things like Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, probably the best looking Harry Potter out of all of those films. Gravity, Children of Men, they all look really, really good in a way that you find quite difficult to explain. But I think if you watch Roma, it's on Netflix, you'll see what I mean. Just the composition of each shot is definitely got something. He's got that eye like that Ridley Scott had earlier in his career. Question 14. Bad day cure. So this must be a pick-me-up movie. What movie do I watch when I'm feeling really fed up and it kind of lifts my spirits? This is a movie I've already done a video of on this channel. And as I say, I'm not a huge fan of comedies, but I do have a few comedies. And this one in particular, I really like. And it's from 1987. And it's a film called Tin Men by Barry Levinson. And it's one of those films where I watched it back when it first came out on video. So like 1988. And I've watched it a lot since then. And I treat the characters in that film like old friends. So whenever I watch it, I feel comfortable, and it's like I'm with people that I know really well. And it's a really nice, light-hearted, funny, and I mean funny as in it does make me laugh, film. And it always, makes me feel better when I've watched it. So if you haven't seen it, then try and find it. I've done a video about it, so you can have a look at that and see what I had to say. But that's another one that isn't available on Blu-ray, and I always said it would be a day one buy for me, but for whatever reason, it's never been released as of now. Favorite protagonist? I've just put Indiana Jones for that one. Do I need to explain why? He's good looking, he's physical, he's adventurous, and he always seems to get all the ladies. Favorite trilogy? Back to the Future. Again, I've kind of explained my reasons for why I love that movie. And the two sequels, the middle one lost its way a little bit, was a little bit confusing the first time I saw it, but the third one in the Wild West was great. So as a trilogy, they do stick together really well. Question 17. Biggest letdown. Again, I'm using a movie that I mentioned earlier, but it would be Star Wars The Force Awakens. I kind of hoped after the prequels that when Disney bought the rights, they would be more true to the original trilogy. But they ruined it because you could tell watching that movie that they never really thought about the plot. I think the marketing men took over, and they'd spent billions of dollars buying the rights from George Lucas and just thought, we've got to get a movie out there quick and make loads of money. So they kind of rushed it through production and just rehashed A New Hope. And then we had The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And I've seen all three of those movies, and you think, if only they did it properly and just thought, right, we've now got the rights to Star Wars. Let's just take stock and plan out a big story arc. So we know where we start and we know where we're going to end. But they didn't do that. And the results speak for themselves. Question 18. Biggest surprise. This is the only question that I don't yet have an answer for, which is very disappointing, I know. But I'm honestly couldn't think of a movie that I've watched where I thought, oh, I really liked that, and I wasn't expecting to like it. Because I'm kind of picky with the movies that I watch for the first time. I don't just blindly pick them. If I see it on streaming, I'll think, well, what's that about? What other films has this guy done? So I'm sorry to disappoint, but I haven't answered that question. Question 19. It says, not the best, but having fun. So a movie that I know isn't great, but I like to watch it anyway. You're probably going to be very, very surprised by this answer, but I'm going to say Death Wish 3. And it's a movie that I'm going to do a video about, just about that one movie. And it's a film, an action film. I love 80s action films. And I think there's something about that particular movie that is like the blueprint for a perfect 80s action movie. And I'm going to make a video explaining why. So if you're interested to find out why I picked Death Wish 3, you'll have to wait. But that's my choice for that question. Question 20. Criminally overlooked. I would say Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. I've got all of Stanley Kubrick's movies, and I always thought Barry Lyndon got overshadowed by his other films, and it was like his least talked about. if you discount his very, very early movies like Killer's Kiss and The Killer. But yeah, Barry Lyndon, I've watched that recently, and it's a long movie, but a bloody great film. Some really good scenes in it, and it's gripping. I thought it would be a boring movie the first time I watched it, but I loved it. And I thought, oh, why is this never really talked about to the same degree as his other films? So that's my answer to that question. Question 21, depressing movie. So a movie that you kind of come away from thinking, oh, and, you know, I thought of Schindler's List, but then I thought, well, Schindler's List, as horrible as the themes in that movie are, there is like an element of hope towards the end of it. And the way Steven Spielberg ended that movie with all the descendants of the Schindler survivors coming over the hill at the end was just amazing. But a movie that I watch and it always makes me feel worse for it is a film called, and it's a fairly recent movie, and it's called Only the Brave, starring Josh Brolin. And it's about a true story about a bunch of firefighters. And spoilers, but they all die at the end. And I went into that movie not knowing the original story. And I loved it. I ended up buying it. I've got it behind me. But it is one of those movies that I have to plan if I'm going to watch it, because I know I'll come away from it feeling worse off. Question 22. So we're getting near the end now. Favourite active director? I think it would be Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve is kind of reinvigorated science fiction for the better. He did both of the two new Dune movies. He did Blade Runner 2049. He did the science fiction movie Arrival, all fantastic films. He did the first Sicario, fantastic film. And I hear that he's planning to do a movie on one of my favourite novels of all time, which is Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama. And I really hope he does, because knowing that book as well as I do, I can see it fitting in with his filmmaking aesthetic. And he kind of favours the minimalist look, doesn't he? If you think of Blade Runner and Dune, a lot of the sets are quite minimal and uncluttered. And when I read Rendezvous with Rama for the first time, I kind of envisaged it. The image I had of it in my mind was minimalistic. And as I say, it's a book that I've always wanted to see turned into a movie. I think David Fincher was attached to do that at one time, but now it's Denis Villeneuve, and I hope he does. It'll be brilliant. Next to last question. Favourite animated movie? I've got 3 animated movies in my collection. So of all the films that I've got, only 3 of them are animated. And those 3 are the Super Mario Brothers movie, the new one, not the one with Bob Hoskins, WALL-E from Pixar, and then the one that I've chosen, which is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Now, I'm a bit too old to be a true Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. They kicked off in like the 80s, so I was just getting towards the end of my teenage years when Mutant Turtles really became big. But I've always kind of liked them, and up to this point, I always said the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was the very first one that Steve Barron did, and I think it was 1990, and I have that on Blu-ray. But I've seen Mutant Mayhem, and I loved it, and I love the style of that animation. It was a very unique, and yeah, it was a great fun movie, and when I watched it, I thought, oh, I'm going to buy that. I liked it that much. So the last question, hey, we got there, is it just says, not usually my thing, but. So a movie that I like, but I can't explain it because it doesn't fit in with any other genre of movies. I guess that's what that question means. And my choice for this is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I hate musicals. I don't think I have any other musical in my collection, unless you class I suppose it is a musical, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But yeah, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've always liked that. I've always liked Tim Curry. And the songs always made me laugh. And I've got the Blu-ray of that. So I guess that's my answer to that question. It's the only one of that type that I own. Yeah, so there we are. So that's my answer to those questions. I'm sorry that there was one question I didn't have an answer for, but even now I can't think of a response to it. If I do, I'll probably pin a comment to this video or something to answer it. So I hope that gave you some insight into my film tastes, and you enjoyed watching it. And if you did, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one.